capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi-apartment buildings or multi-families that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number? Or is $2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know, Zach.
It's a tough one. I know.
Really hard.
And maybe comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her. I don't think it's a good idea.
It's a ghost, dude. Welcome back, everybody, to Bread Theory. Tonight, I'm joined again by Trisha, and we are going to be going through Chapter 2 of A People's History of the United States. How you doing tonight, Trisha?
Doing all right. Roasting my ass off out here in the Sonoran Desert, but good.
Yeah, I can tell. Man.
And this is after moving out of the Phoenix Valley up into the mountains where it's even cooler and it's still hotter and shit. But, surviving.
Yeah. Well, that's climate change for you, I guess. Been a very strange spring all around. It was in the 90s here just the other day in parts of Minnesota, and it produced a gigantic. That was the night we were streaming when there was a huge thunderstorm.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Gotta love how that happens. It's one of those weird things where, like, the bigger heat waves we get, the more storms we get, and, like, further west of you, it was dropping hail.
Yeah, we had a little bit of hail too. Yeah.
Yeah, massive heat creating ice. What?
Yeah,
that's how that works.
Oh wow!
I wish we could get some of that rain, but
Yeah. Anything new with you? What have you been up to lately?
Not much, really. It's been so damn hot here, even with it being cooler than it was down in the valley. Like, I've pretty much been lethargic for days. I've managed to wander about 50 feet away to the pool and back. That's it. That's it. I'm just thankful that this campground has a pool and had a spot open right up next to the clubhouse.
There you go. Is that pool any relief? Because I've been in swimming pools in Arizona, and it's like warm bath water. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about maybe 10 degrees cooler than the air, just enough to take the edge off.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And stupid hot, man.
Yeah, you need to go find some.
People think climate change isn't a fucking real thing, and where I'm at right now, just south of Sedona, the average temps here this time of year are in the 80s. Yesterday it was 102. Still better than the 108 that it was down in Phoenix, but
108.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, hell, down there we were getting triple digits already in March. Hit and miss, not solid, many days straight, but it was only cooling off into the 90s.
That's crazy.
I was like, fuck, I gotta go a little further north, but still hotter than it was supposed to be here.
Yeah, wow.
Hi, James.
Hello to James. Good to see you. Glad you're able to come in on the beginning. So yeah. Man, this has just been the weirdest spring, everywhere.
Yeah, an insanely hot one, and it kind of freaks me out about how bad is the summer going to get when so many places are seeing high 90s, if not triple digits, in March and April. Already, it's just stupid hot. Where you're at, it went from snow and slush to stupid hot right away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we had an extended winter, and then all of a sudden, it's 70s, and I think we peaked 90 the other day. So it's really unheard of at this time of year. But hello, Perennial Green. How you doing?
The icon photo is super tiny on my screen, but that looks like Amanda.
Yes, it's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
So yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the chapter here. So to refresh everybody, we were just getting into the chapter on the U.S. slave trade, and it was pretty bad already. So, oh, you know what? I should edit the description to include the content warning.
Yeah.
I forgot to do that, so let me just go ahead and edit that.
Right. Warning. Warning, warning, warning. Howard Zinn unabashedly uses outdated terms at best,
Yeah.
and sometimes the downright racial slurs that still make people cringe and want to punch somebody. You know, and I don't take that as him having racist tendencies at all. I take that as him being no holds barred when it comes to describing how fucked up things were.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He
You know?
wants it to have the impact that it deserves.
Right. Of this is how fucking atrocious these people really fucking were towards anybody with pigment. Like the original white colonizers coming here who were enslaving people, slaughtering people, they were fucking horrendous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No two ways about it. There's no easy way to say it. James says there was an awesome lunar eclipse last night. I did not stay up to see it. It would have been like 11 o'clock my time. But did you get to see it, James? Did you see it in person? That's pretty cool.
Oh, hey, there's my friend Shanika. Hi, I'm glad
Hi,
you're watching.
Shanika. Good to have you.
And I love you too, darling. I'm glad you're here. Hell yeah.
All right. All
And in
right.
case you didn't catch our trigger warning a moment ago, we're reading Howard Zinn's history of, or a people's history of the United States, and it does get quite vulgar.
Yep. We're going to be talking about slavery. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So, just so you know. Oh, that's really cool, James. I'm glad you got to see it. If you have any pictures of it, you should put it up in the Discord. It'd be cool to see.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I feel you, Shanika. There's been a few times that I've had, you know, like that inclination of like, do I need a fucking drink for this? I've definitely smoked my way through a few episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Man, that first episode hits really hard too.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the entire genocide of peoples.
Yeah.
So. All right, well, let's get into it. And here we go.
Treatment. Under such conditions, even the slightest display of humanity between the races might be considered evidence of a basic human drive toward community. Sometimes it is noted that even before 1600, when the slave trade had just begun, before Africans were stamped by it, literally and symbolically, the color black was distasteful. In England, before 1600, it meant, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, quote, deeply stained with dirt, soiled, dirty, foul, having dark or deadly purposes, malignant, pertaining to or involving death, deadly, baneful, disastrous, sinister, foul, iniquitous, atrocious, horribly wicked, indicating disgrace, censure, liability to punishment, etc., unquote. And Elizabethan poetry often used the color white in connection with beauty. It may be that, in the absence of any other overriding factor, darkness and blackness associated with night and unknown would take on those meanings, but the presence of another human being is a powerful fact, and the conditions of that presence are crucial in determining whether an initial prejudice against a mere color divorced from humankind is turned into brutality and hatred. In spite of such preconceptions about blackness, in spite of special subordination of blacks in the Americas in the 17th century, there is evidence that where whites and blacks found themselves with common problems, common work, common enemy in their master, they behaved toward one another as equals. One scholar of slavery, Kenneth Stamp, has put it, Negro and white servants of the 17th century were remarkably unconcerned about the visible physical differences. Black and white worked together, fraternized together. The very fact that laws had to be passed after a while to forbid such relations indicates the strength of that tendency. In 1661, a law was passed in Virginia that, quote, in case any English servant shall run away in company of any Negroes, unquote, he would have to give special service for extra years to the master of the runaway Negro. In 1691, Virginia provided for the banishment of any, quote, white man or woman being free, who shall intermarry with a Negro, mulatto, or Indian man or woman, bond or free, unquote. There is an enormous difference between a feeling of racial strangeness, perhaps fear, and the mass enslavement of millions of black people that took place in the Americas. The transition...
Yep, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, there was quite a few uprisings that were unified between black slaves and white servants going, fuck this mess altogether. And that's why they passed those laws, because they couldn't fucking handle that unity happening, and not just the slaves revolting, but the white servants too.
That's right. Yeah. It's an early form of intersectionality. People found common cause in being oppressed by white aristocrats.
Yep. And yes, James, America has always been racist.
We kind of invented it, yeah.
Yeah. There's 3 silent K's in America.
Yep. Although they've been less silent in recent years.
Sadly.
From one to the other cannot be explained easily by natural tendencies. It is not hard to understand as the outcome of historical conditions. Slavery grew as the plantation system grew. The reason is easily traceable to something other than natural racial repugnance. The number of arriving whites, whether free or indentured servants under 4 to 7 years contract, was not enough to meet the need of the plantations. By 1700 in Virginia, there were 6,000 slaves, 1/12 of the population. By 1763, there were 170,000 slaves, about half the population. Blacks were easier to enslave than whites or Indians, but they were still not easy to enslave. From the beginning, the imported black men and women resisted their enslavement. Ultimately, their resistance was controlled, and slavery was established for 3 million blacks in the South. Still, under the most difficult conditions, under pain of mutilation and death. Throughout their 200 years of enslavement in North America, these Afro-Americans continued to rebel. Only occasionally was there an organized insurrection. More often, they showed their refusal to submit by running away. Even more often, they engaged in sabotage, slowdowns, and subtle forms of resistance, which asserted, if only to themselves and their brothers and sisters, their dignity as human beings. The refusal began in Africa. One slave trader reported that Negroes were, quote, so willful and loath to leave their own country that they had often leaped out of the canoes, boat, and ship into the sea, and kept under water till they were drowned, unquote. When the very first black slaves were brought into Hispaniola in 1503, the Spanish governor of Hispaniola complained to the Spanish court that fugitive Negro slaves were teaching disobedience to the Indians. In the 1520s and 1530s, there were slave revolts in Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Santa Marta, and what is now Panama. Shortly after those rebellions, the Spanish established a special police for chasing fugitive slaves.
So something just came to mind. There's a really great podcast. It's called Uncivil, and it documents the history of the Civil War. But it's a much more honest look at it. And a big part of what they go through is the way that the Civil War is taught, especially in Southern schools now. And they would say things like, I can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but basically it was that it was very rare to have a cruel slave master. Most slaves were treated quite well and stuff like that. And these are things that kids are learning to this day in some schools.
Downright lies.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a way to kind of soften the entire experience of slavery.
Yeah, whitewashing.
Hmm.
Because as Shanika just said, there there were dog catchers, quote unquote. That's the origination of the police.
Right? Yeah.
That's where
Slave
police
patrols.
fucking started their existence. Was, you know, going and catching runaway slaves.
Yep. Yeah, and there's another really great podcast, the Behind the Bastards, the great series, and they called it Behind the Police, and they went through that whole thing of where the police force started in America and how it evolved and all that stuff. So I'll find some links for that stuff. You've heard the story in school, Amanda? I find that hard to believe. That's crazy. In the North here, because like these were curriculum points that were kind of forced into Southern education by like the Daughters of the Confederacy and stuff like that. These organizations that tried to uphold the Confederate legacy and put it in a positive light after long after it had fallen. So that's very surprising that would have ever heard that in school. Oh, what?
What's Alchemy?
Alchemy was a school. It was a charter school. It was about as close as you can get to a religious school without breaking charter. They happened to be a Jewish school though, but they were very conservative in the way that they were a classical academy. So, that pretty much tells you what you need to know.
Sadly, too many of them, like these private schools, period. I don't mean specifically, that one being the Jewish one, because Christian ones do this too, but they fucked up and started teaching manifest destiny racist bullshit in these charter schools because they're trying to further push the white supremacy bullshit. That's really, really fucking sad that they're doing that at a Jewish school too.
I know, right?
The history of white supremacy, also targeting Jewish people as well. What the fuck?
I know. It's ridiculous. Yeah, man. The people from that school were...
It's one of those moments that makes my asshole brain go, yup. They're definitely putting the Nazi in Ashkenazi.
Oh, yeah. There are sometimes people that are somehow Jewish, but then also very sympathetic to very right-wing views. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, given the history, but there you have it.
Yeah. I mean, hell, even, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there's a family called the Kaisers, which are clearly European converts to Judaism. They're, and they're white supremacists, and they're fucking wealthy as shit and own a lot of stuff in town. But they push the white supremacy lines just as hard as the Brady family there that started the Tulsa riots 100 years ago.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Oh, thanks for the cheer, Ellie Yoshi. Good to see you, friend. Everyone should follow Ellie Yoshi. Let me just shout you out here real quick. Oh, oops, I hit the wrong button. Should have been like this. Hold on 1 second. That should work. There we go.
Beautiful.
So Amanda says the narrative was that slaves were treated well and given property. Were they saying after the war or during slavery? Because they certainly were not given property during slavery. And some of them were given property. We'll cover this in this chapter here. But some of them were given property after the war, but then it was quickly taken back by the government.
Right. And as far as treated well, I'd love to know, in respect to what? In comparison to what?
Right.
What the fuck? And as far as even what I found in researching this, as far as being given property, it was typically only to freed slaves who had both African and indigenous blood and were given basically reservation land with whatever tribe that they belonged to. That side of their family.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're coming up to it pretty well. I don't know. We're a little bit more than halfway through this chapter, so we'll cover that pretty soon, I think. Oh, the reparations, yeah. So the reparations were quickly reversed. We'll be talking about that pretty soon.
Yeah.
So David Evans says the three religions from the Middle East, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, are proto-fascist and involve ethnic ownership, i.e. the basis of defective capitalism. I don't know that I would personally go so far to say that they are all anything. I think that each of them, there's quite a spectrum of beliefs and practices. So,
Yeah, when it comes to individuals and how they cherry pick their religions, yeah. But when it comes to the teachings themselves, if you were to go read Leviticus and Deuteronomy, which are part of the Torah and the Old Testament of the Bible, they literally have laws for how to properly enslave other people. And it typically is, it's okay to enslave, like fully enslave somebody who is of a different ethnicity, a different culture, a different tribe. And it's only okay to do indentured servitude with those who are of your own tribe or tribes, things like that. And yeah, you make a solid point there, Shanika, with the choice to believe. If you're choosing to believe some fucked up bullshit like that, you're doing your religion wrong. I don't care if it was thousands of years ago or now, but people who try to use religion to justify hatred are fucked from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a horrible thing to do. All right, moving on.
A Virginia statute of 1669 referred to, quote, the obstinacy of many of them, and in 1680 the Assembly took note of slave meetings, quote, under the pretense of feasts and brawls, which they considered of, quote, dangerous consequence, unquote. In 1687, in the colony's northern neck, a plot was discovered in which slaves planned to kill all the whites in the area and escape during a mass funeral. Gerald Mullen, who studied slave resistance in 18th century Virginia in his work Flight and Rebellion, reports, quote, the available sources on slavery in 18th century Virginia plantation and county records, the newspaper advertisements for runaways, described rebellious slaves and few others. The slaves described were lazy and thieving. They feigned illnesses, destroyed crops, stores, tools, and sometimes attacked or killed overseers. They operated black markets and stolen goods. Runaways were defined as various types. They were truants, who usually returned voluntarily, outlaws, and slaves who were actually fugitives. Men who visited relatives, went to town to pass as free, or tried to escape slavery completely, either by boarding ships and leaving the colony, or banding together in cooperative efforts to establish villages or hideouts on the frontier. The commitment of another type of rebellious slave was total. These men became killers, arsonists, and insurrectionists. Slaves recently from Africa, still holding on to the heritage of their communal society, would run away in groups and try to establish villages of runaways out in the wilderness on the frontier. Slaves born in America, on the other hand, were more likely to run off alone and, with the skills they had learned on the plantation, try to pass as free men. In the colonial papers of England, a 1729 report from the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia to the British Board of Trade tells how, quote, a number of Negroes, about 15, formed a design to withdraw from their master and to fix themselves in the fastness of the neighboring mountains. They had found means to get into their possession some arms and ammunition, and they took along with them some provisions, their cloths, bedding, and working tools, though this attempt has happily been defeated. It ought nevertheless to awaken us into some effectual measures. Slavery was immensely profitable to some masters. James Madison told a British visitor shortly after the American Revolution that he could make $257 on every Negro in a year and spend only $12 or $13 on his keep. Another viewpoint was of slave owner Landon Carter, writing about 50 years earlier, complaining that his slaves so neglected their work and were so uncooperative, either cannot or will not work, that he began to wonder if keeping them was worthwhile.
I mean, I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but it's so ridiculous how these slave owners just can't figure out how come the slaves would ever revolt or be violent to them or run away or not want to be a slave.
Right. It's just fucking mind blowing that they couldn't wrap their head around. Why wouldn't somebody want to be my slave? Gee, I wonder.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's like they literally viewed them as like cattle. You know, it would be like if your cows ran away, and you'd wonder why your cows ran away. But
I
yeah.
feed them and give them a barn. Why would they want to leave?
Right.
Fuck.
Yeah, I don't whip them too hard. So yeah.
More audacity of the caucasity.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Ah. God damn it.
Some historians have painted a picture, based on the infrequency of organized rebellions and the ability of the South to maintain slavery for 200 years, of a slave population made submissive by their condition. With their African heritage destroyed, they were, as Stanley Elkins said, made into sambos, a society of helpless dependence, or, as another historian, Ulrich Phillips said, biracial quality submissive. But looking at the totality of slave behavior, at the resistance of everyday life, from quiet non-cooperation in work to running away, the picture becomes different. In 1710, warning the Virginia Assembly, Governor Alexander Spotswood said, "Freedom wears a cap which can, without a tongue, call together all those who long to shake off the fetters of slavery. And as such, an insurrection would surely be attended with most dreadful consequences. So I think we cannot be too early in providing against it, both by putting ourselves in a better posture of defense and by making a law to prevent the consultations of those Negroes." Indeed, considering the harshness of punishment for running away, that so many blacks did run away must be a sign of a powerful rebelliousness. All through the 1700s, the Virginia Slave Code read, quote, "Whereas many times slaves run away and lie hid and lurking in swamps, woods, and other obscure places, killing hogs and committing other injuries to the inhabitants, if the slave does not immediately return, anyone whatsoever may kill or destroy such slaves by such ways and means as he shall think fit. If the slave..."
Oh. That sentence just kept getting worse as it went on. So not only can you kill them, you can be as sadistic and cruel as you feel like it, if they would have the audacity to dare run away.
This idea of rebellion, too, really irks me because you can't rebel against somebody who isn't actually a fucking authority.
Right.
Like, they want to act like it's a petulant child disobeying them, and it's like, you don't run other people, motherfuckers.
Right, yeah.
The fucking audacity that they actually fucking thought that they had the right to tell somebody where they could go, what they could do, what they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's astounding.
It is, yeah. And then they seem to never give it a second thought. You know, it was just a matter of course for them. Oh, sure, of course I own other people.
Right?
Ah. It's a mentality that's very hard to understand.
It's literally another moment that is making my fucking brain just scream like, on the inside.
Right.
What the fuck is wrong with them?
What is wrong with them? Why are so many people... Why was psychopathy just such a ingrained into the fabric of that society?
No.
What led them to be
it.
so cruel to other people?
And fucking justifying it with, the fact that these motherfuckers lived in northern regions long enough that they had vitamin D deficiency and lost their pigment to be able to absorb more UV light and produce enough vitamin D to not die.
Right.
That is not a superior trait. That is not an advancement.
It's just, arbitrary adaptations to local environments, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that separates any race.
Right. Acclimation, not evolution.
Right, yeah.
God, people are fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Fucking dumb.
Yeah.
And white supremacists are amongst the fucking dumbest ever to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Not just then, but still today.
Yeah,
there's still remnants of this fucked up line of thought in a lot of people.
Yeah, you look at the entire right. not an intellectual among them. I mean, they have their people that they throw up as like big brain people like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and these sorts of people. But if you listen to them for more than a few minutes, you realize they're all full of shit and they just talk fast and are confident. None of them actually have anything to say. None of them really know what they're talking about. And if they ever encounter a skilled debater, they get utterly crushed every time.
All I know is Ben Shapiro can't even get his wife wet, so there ain't nothing superior about that motherfucker.
He thinks it's a problem if that happens.
Fucking idiot.
Yes.
Fucking idiot.
No one dunks on Ben Shapiro harder than Ben Shapiro. That's always been the case.
Right. He tries to come out with some shit thinking that he just laid down a lit ass fucking argument, and it's like, wow, you just outed yourself. Really hard.
Yep.
Shanika, no, what was the Stanford prison experiment? I know there's been countless fucked up experiments here.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was they had a bunch of people. I think these were all college students, and they put them into a real prison, but they were just doing an experiment. They weren't actually, none of them were actually criminals, and they had some of the students be guards and some of them be the prisoners. And they found that pretty quickly those who were the guards started abusing their power, started treating them as subhuman, stuff like that.
Yep.
There's been a lot of criticism of the way the study was conducted, as well as it not being ever repeated very well. But it's often used to show that given power, people will be cruel to one another. Like, that's all it takes is just to say, you're better than that other person. I'm better? Well, I'm going to start being cruel now.
right.
So,
It's fucked up.
yeah.
Fucking, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Right.
Once again,
Yeah, I think there's definitely there is a nugget of truth to the idea that power is bad for people. Like, it destroys your conscience, because for one thing, you cannot empathize with people when you live so much better than them. You never experience any of their struggles. It becomes harder and harder the higher you go to really understand where other people are even coming from. So I think there is a lot of truth to that, and it's a big reason that I think the left has the right answer, in that there shouldn't be people who are able to hoard so much power and wealth that they can get to that point where they can start being cruel to one another.
right.
It's just bad for everybody involved, including the people that are doing it.
It's like nobody fucking ever registered the thought process behind that old phrase of absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah,
It's fucking true.
I think it is true. Yeah, as often as it is repeated, there's a hell of a lot of truth to that, and James brings up a good example. Elon seems like a kind of a psychopath.
He owes
So.
billions in reparations to South Africa for those
Oh yeah,
emerald
Oh, yeah.
mines.
yeah. All those emeralds that made him a self-made man.
Right. Self-made my ass.
Yeah, right.
Like, born into wealth
Born into wealth.
and exploited it that much harder.
He paid other people to invent stuff that he took credit for. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
That's Elon for you. But his followers are just some of the most cultiest people I've ever encountered. You cannot say a bad thing about anything he ever does, or they'll just jump all over you.
Right.
It would be comical if it wasn't so worrying that there's so many of them out there just waiting to pounce.
Right. And how they can just, I don't know, worship him so hard and try to emulate him, and try to act as if, he just built all these businesses and he's this genius. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, he was handed a fucking silver spoon when he was born, and he's done plenty of hiring of and exploiting of labor that actually comes with those types of knowledge as far as the science goes, etc. Whatever he's,
Mm-hmm.
do. That doesn't make him fucking smart at all. That
Not
just
at all.
knows
Not at
how
all.
to exploit capitalist fucking financial system here.
That's right. Well, look at how many of his ideas, the ones that supposedly he comes up with all his own, are just garbage. Like his stupid ass Hyperloop, or the tunnel underneath Las Vegas for his stupid cars that they go like 15 miles an hour from like 4 different stations. It took like years to bore all the holes to make these tunnels, and it doesn't even work nearly as well as he made it do. His actual ideas suck.
God damn it. This is what happens when morons are born with money.
Right, yeah. Which, you know, it's fine for people to try different ideas, even if they seem stupid, but there's absolutely no reason that a certain group of elite people should be the only ones to ever get to try their ideas. I'm sure there are millions of people that live their entire lives in poverty that could have much better ideas than any Elon Musk or any inventor out there.
Right.
But they never even get the chance because they're systemically blocked from doing so. So.
Right. They don't have investors lining up to fucking, help develop the tech for whatever their idea is.
Right.
You get to go on a stupid TV show and compete with 20 other fucking people to see if anybody wants to invest in your idea.
Oh God, yeah. Those shows are so predatory too.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of venture capitalists, which are basically just vulture capitalists. They have a ton of money so that they can make a whole lot of bets, and that if the statistic, if statistically enough of them come to fruition, then they make more than their money back. So that's there's no skill to being a venture capitalist. All you have to do is have enough money that you can throw it at a lot of different things, and eventually one of them will hit. It'd be like going to a casino and having enough money to put bets on every single blackjack table. Eventually you're gonna win.
Right.
So, all right. Well, let's move on in the chapter.
Is apprehended, it shall be lawful for the county courts to order such punishment for the said slave, either by dismembering or in any other way, as they, in their discretion, shall think fit, for the reclaiming of any such incorrigible slave, and terrifying others from the like practices. Mullen found newspaper advertisements between 1736 and 1801 for 1,138 men runaways and 141 women. One consistent reason for running away was to find members of one's family, showing that despite the attempts of the slave system to destroy family ties by not allowing marriages and by separating families, slaves would face death and mutilation to get together. In Maryland, where slaves were about 1/3 of the population in 1750, slavery had been written into law since the 1660s, and statutes for controlling rebellious slaves were passed. There were cases where slave women killed their masters, sometimes by poisoning them, sometimes by burning tobacco houses and homes. Punishments ranged from whipping and branding to execution, but the trouble continued. In 1742, 7 slaves were put to death for murdering their master. Fear of slave revolt seems to have been a permanent fact of plantation life. William Byrd, a wealthy Virginia slave owner, wrote in 1736, quote, "We have already at least 10,000 men of these descendants of Ham fit to bear arms, and these numbers increase every day, as well by birth as by importation. And in case there should arise a man of desperate fortune, he might with more advantage than Catiline kindle a servile war and tinge our rivers wide as they are with blood." It was an intricate and powerful system of control that the slave owners developed to maintain their labor supply and their way of life, a system both subtle and crude.
Yeah, James, if you had 64 copyrights, if you could buy 64 copyrights, you'd have a much better chance of becoming rich because, one of them will probably end up being important. So yeah, just having money means that you can win. That's you're right. That seems like a very rigged system to me too. And then also, if you have a lot of money, you can defend those patents as well. You can hire lawyers to, Even sue people that haven't infringed on your patent, but are close enough that you can drag them into legal battles until they fold as a company, and then you can just take over their share of the market. Yeah.
I like how Shanika labeled it of capitalism.
Capitalism.
It really is. It's a bunch of crap. It's just going to take a crap on you. It'll eat you and crap you out. Then you're supposed to pretend like this is some kind of great fucking opportunity to be
Yep.
exploited.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Moving on.
Involving every device that social orders employ for keeping power and wealth where it is. As Kenneth Stamp puts it, a wise master did not take seriously the belief that Negroes were natural-born slaves. He knew better. He knew that Negroes freshly imported from Africa had to be broken into bondage, that each succeeding generation had to be carefully trained. This was no easy task, for the bondsman rarely submitted willingly. Moreover, he rarely submitted completely.
I mean, that right there should kind of say that what you're doing is wrong if you have to literally torture people into accepting their fate. Should maybe be a red flag that you're not being a good person to other people.
That. But, I mean, we're just talking about Christians from a few hundred years ago. We can't expect them to actually have ethics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, some Christians of that time did have ethics. The Quakers were pretty instrumental in the Underground Railroad and setting up way stations and stuff like that.
True.
So,
They're one of the few flavors that actually operates in a Christ-like manner. So I guess
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
should correct myself and be more specific of a lot of these people who are doing the slavery shit and brutalizing people, they're fundamentalists.
right. Yes. Yeah. A lot of fundamentalists came to this country for that very reason, because no one would put up with their bullshit even in Europe. So they're like, well, let's go to a new place, and then we can just, live as kings and have things as backward and brutal as we really want them to be.
Right. Pretend to be coming over here for freedom of religion when they just wanted freedom to force their flavor of it on everyone around them. That's not freedom.
No, not in the least. Yeah, it's personal freedom. It's just not freedom for anybody else.
Right. Not real freedom.
No.
And James, you're right. If you have to shoot everyone who doesn't agree with you, it's possibly possible you might be fucking wrong.
Right.
Maybe.
Just
Maybe.
keeps happening.
You're the asshole in that equation.
Yeah. If only there was an r/am I the asshole back in that time, maybe some sleep.
Yeah. Like you get a little feedback from the rest of the village.
That's right.
Yes, you're the fucking asshole, dude.
Yep.
Comes out.
Yeah.
In most cases, there was no end to the need for control, at least not until old age reduced the slave to a condition of helplessness. The system was psychological and physical at the same time. The slaves were taught discipline, were impressed again and again with the idea of their own inferiority, to know their place, to see blackness as a sign of subordination, to be awed by the power of the master, to merge their interests with the master's, destroying their own individual needs. To accomplish this, there was the discipline of hard labor, the breakup of the slave family, the lulling effects of religion, which sometimes led to great mischief, as one slaveholder reported, the creation of disunity among slaves by separating them into field slaves and more privileged house slaves, and finally, the power of law and the immediate power of the overseer to invoke whipping, burning, mutilation, and death. Dismemberment was provided for in the Virginia Code of 1705. Maryland
So
passed a
gross.
law in 1723 providing for cutting off the ears of blacks who struck whites, and that for certain serious crimes, slaves should be hanged and the body quartered and exposed. Still, rebellions took place.
You definitely have a point, Shanika. It doesn't sound much different than the cultural landscape of today. That this basically is how a lot of conservatives talk.
Yeah.
They're getting pretty mask off about their desire to do that sort of thing to virtually everyone who's not like them. You know, they're pushing really hard now that they have the least bit of momentum from the probable overturning of Roe versus Wade, that they're, you know, pushing it out to trying to get rid of contraception, trying to get rid of gay marriage, trying to roll back all rights that they possibly can.
I saw some footage from Saturday where there was a few audacious ass fucking white men standing on the steps of what I think was like a courthouse or something where a protest was happening in front of. And they actually fucking came right out and acknowledged what we've all been saying for a long fucking time of this is about one thing and one thing only, and it's controlling women's bodies. It's what it all comes down to.
Of
The
course.
motherfucker literally had the audacity to say back to the crowd that your body's not yours anymore. Your body is mine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what they want. That's exactly what they want. They're incredibly cowardly and fearful people, and the only way that they can conceive of a better future is if they have absolute control over everything and everybody. Because they're just so fearful of everything that's different or, you know, not going in line with what they want. Yeah, I attended the rally to support Planned Parenthood on Saturday. It was a pretty good turnout. There was probably, I would say, I don't know, 20,000-30,000 people at the particular Planned Parenthood that I went to, and you know, lots of good atmosphere. People seemed to be mostly positive. I mean, we would see women in hijabs going by, honking and waving, and you know, supporting what was going on. We saw all sorts of people in support of women's rights and women's bodily autonomy. So that was nice to see. There were some low points too. Some people going by in a car actually spit on my mother as we were standing there just holding our signs. So, but that was, at the very least, it was the vast minority that was behaving badly.
The thing is that's really fucking scary about what kind of precedent this is going to set is other things that are also covered by the 14th Amendment, such as black and white people getting married,
Right.
gay people getting married.
Right.
What other rights are they going to try to walk back? How many people
Everything.
are going to declare fucking, I don't know, bastards, illegitimate, fucking whatever you want to call it, because they go, well, your marriage is no longer valid because you guys don't have the
Right.
same shade of pigment.
Right. Yeah, it seems to be that's what's at the heart of this absolutely absurd, constitutional originalist point of view, is that they want to do away with basically every Supreme Court decision that didn't directly have to do with the original Constitution and its original interpretations, and just
Which speaks
get
volumes.
all of it. Yeah, yeah,
Because they know just as well as you and I, and probably everybody watching this too knows that fucking those papers were written by white wealthy men.
mm-hmm.
It was only ever fucking meant to serve them,
Yeah, landowning at that. Yeah,
which is why we've had to fucking make so many fucking changes to laws over the years,
right.
because this fucking country is not a country of wealthy white men.
Yeah,
This is a melting pot. Everybody's here.
everyone's here. Everyone deserves to have a good life and to not be oppressed and have choices and freedom. We talk about the idea in the Declaration of Independence of your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness being unalienable.
Right.
And yet when it comes down to it, it can't be unalienable if you can take away someone's health care, or if you can deny them education, or if you can deny them food or housing or whatever. If people can go hungry or live on the streets, then that's certainly not unalienable at that
Right.
point. So,
Well, that's why they phrased it the way they did. They literally meant it when they said all men are created equal, because in their perspective, if you have pigment, you are less than a man, you are less than human.
Right.
If you were a female, then you are less than human
right.
because you are subordinate to men. That is precisely what they meant.
Mm-hmm.
Is all white, wealthy men are created equal and no fucking buddy else.
Right.
And fuck that, fuck them.
Right.
Fuck
Yeah.
this traditionalist bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is if you ever get into arguments with these people, like I do from time to time online, get into arguments with these originalists and whatever, all you have to do is push them long enough to say, well, what do you mean by that? You know, do you really believe everyone is created equal, or is it just a select few? Or what do you mean by I believe in an originalist interpretation of the Constitution? Does that include slavery? And then eventually they either try to weasel out of it, or they just stop talking usually, and that pretty much speaks volumes about what they actually believe. Yeah, they do want that sort of a society. Yes, they do believe that they are superior. They just know that it's not fashionable to say that out loud.
Right. They'll say it in other ways and phrase certain legislation in ways that doesn't outright say anything that is considered racist language, but still specifically targets Black, Indigenous, and other people of color.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the way they get around everything. That's why we still have schools that are funded by property taxes, because it's a way that you can carve out districts for your own wealthy ass and leave everyone else to fend for themselves.
Right. And when you combine it with what used to be redlining is now gentrification, but has the same effect. You're literally fucking divvying up school systems majorly by racial lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's fucked. It's fucked, you know. And yeah, you know, there's a lot of areas where, you know, you'll see like there's a sprinkling of people of color, you know, whether it be, you know, somebody's a doctor or an attorney or something like that that makes good money and they can afford to move to this suburb where their kids are going to have a decent school. But when you're looking at major cities, you still very clearly see the outlinings of this school system is this neighborhood, and this neighborhood.
Right.
And this one's these ones, you know, etc. on through the fucking map, where they're literally imposing about 90% racial segregation.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
might not be complete because
It'll be as much as they can. Yeah.
because, you know, class comes into play there too.
Right.
But it's still very segregated.
And that's the thing. Any sort of laws or rules you can make that are discriminatory by class, just they are de facto also racist, because guess who tends to be in the lower classes is racial minorities.
Due to systemic racism being built to keep people in lower classes.
Absolutely. But it's more politically palatable to say, well, we just want to keep poor people out of our neighborhood, than it is to say we want to keep those people out of our neighborhood, meaning black and brown people.
All they did was change the verbiage. It still means the same fucking thing.
Means the same thing, has the same effect. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on.
Not many, but enough to create constant fear among white planters. The first large-scale revolt in the North American colonies took place in New York in 1712. In New York, slaves were 10% of the population, the highest population in the northern states, where economic conditions usually did not require large numbers of field slaves. About 25 blacks and 2 Indians set fire to a building, then killed 9 whites who came on the scene. They were captured by soldiers, put on trial, and 21 were executed. The governor's report to England said, "Some were burnt, others were hanged, one broke on the wheel, and one hung alive in chains in the town." One had been burned over a slow fire for 8 to 10 hours. All this to serve notice to other slaves. A letter to London from South Carolina in 1720 reports, I am now to acquaint you that very lately we have had a very wicked and barbarous plot of the design of the Negroes rising with a design to destroy all the white people in the country and then to take Charlestown in full body. But it pleased God it was discovered, and many of them taken prisoners, and some burnt, and some hanged, and some banished. Around this time, there were a number of fires in Boston and New Haven, suspected to be the work of Negro slaves. As a result, one Negro was executed in Boston, and the Boston Council ruled that any slaves who, on their own, gathered in groups of 2 or more were to be punished by whipping. At Stono, South Carolina, in 1739, about 20 slaves rebelled, killed 2 warehouse guards, stole guns and gunpowder, and headed south, killing people in their way and burning buildings. They were joined by others until there were perhaps 80 slaves in all, and according to one account of the time, quote, they called out liberty, marching on with colors displayed and 2 drums beating. The militia found and attacked them. In the ensuing battle, perhaps 50 slaves and 25 whites were killed before the uprising was crushed. Herbert Aptheker, who did detailed research on slave resistance in North America for his book American Negro Slave Revolts, found about 250 instances where a minimum of 10 slaves joined in a revolt or conspiracy. From time to time, whites were involved in the slave resistance. As early as 1663, indentured white servants and black slaves in Gloucester County, Virginia, formed a conspiracy to rebel and gain their freedom. The plot was betrayed and ended with executions. Mullen reports that the newspaper notices of runaways in Virginia often warned, quote, ill-disposed, unquote, whites about harboring fugitives. Sometimes slaves and free men ran off together, or cooperated in crimes together. Sometimes black male slaves ran off and joined white women. From time to time, white ship captains and watermen dealt with runaways, perhaps making the slave a part of the crew. In New York, in 1741, there were 10,000 whites in the city and 2,000 black slaves. It had been a hard winter, and the poor, slave and free, had suffered greatly. When mysterious fires broke out, blacks and whites were accused of conspiring together. Mass hysteria developed against the accused. After a trial full of lurid accusations by informers and forced confessions, 2 white men and 2 white women were executed. 18 slaves were hanged, and 13 slaves were burned alive. Only one fear was greater than the fear of black rebellion in the new American colonies. That was the fear that discontented whites would join black slaves to overthrow the existing order. In the early years of slavery,
That fear is still very much alive and well today, and that is why the fucking government targeted the Panthers.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are terrified of poor people of all different races banding together and flexing our power.
When they saw both the Panthers and MLK bringing together poor people of all races in a unified front, that scared the shit out of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, they had to crush it immediately. Yeah. Well, then they know that, we really are the ones that could control all of the power because we're the ones who make everything and run everything and do everything. I mean, as we
Proletariat.
As we literally saw on our last episode, rich white people are so lazy that they will import people from, thousands of miles away rather than do a day's work in the field.
Yeah.
They started slavery in order to not have to work when they were facing starvation. It's not as though they just, were lazily sitting around one day. They were facing starvation, and the thought of working in the field was more horrific to them than importing people from thousands of miles away and starting a slave trade.
Right. When it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if each family was gardening enough food to feed their family with maybe a little surplus to can or freeze for winter, then it's not really that much fucking work.
Right.
It's really not. When you have a whole family working one garden plot that's enough to feed them, that's not a lot of fucking
manageable.
work.
Right, yeah. As long as you know what you're doing and everyone pulls their weight, yeah.
Most people I know who have the ability and space at least to have a full garden do so in addition to having day jobs. It is not that much fucking work to just produce enough to feed yourself and your family.
But it was to them. Their egos are just so fragile that if they ever considered that they could be lowered to the level of the common folk, they would basically just rather die.
This is another factor that also comes into the colorism bullshit involved with white supremacy and racism across the board.
Yeah.
Because they literally looked at it as, if you have pigment, that means that you are poor enough to have to go outside in the sun to do physical labor. So therefore, the paler you are, the richer you are.
Yeah, that's why the sickly powdered look was so in fashion in like the Victorian era.
And an inner part of me just kind of smiled a little bit, like, haha, they were putting poisonous fucking white dust all over their skin and killing themselves.
Right. They also drove themselves mad and made them even more cruel, so there was that too.
Sadly. But at least some of them offed themselves without even realizing they were doing it with that white powder bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
So Shanika says...
Toxic.
Yeah.
The outside match the toxic inside.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Absolutely. So Shanika says, have you seen the new Google Pixel 6 ad? The selling point is that black people can now adjust the color quality for their dark skin. I have not seen that, but yeah, there's a lot of racism inherent in technology too. Just because you know it's not all just computers doing everything. Someone has to feed the data into those systems, and so the default is white people. That's why for a while Google image search had a problem with racism. It was identifying I think it was gorillas as black people. It was coming up as black people in search results because all the images that they had fed into the system were of white people. It just hadn't occurred to them to put in a diversity of races. So, yeah, just because we're using a new technology system or machine learning or whatever it is, you can still have a lot of biases baked into the system.
Well, I mean, even look at, on the filters that you have on your camera, on your phone, it's very common anymore to have very simple modifications. So one click and it does multiple things to the image.
Right.
And most have one that's called beauty. Every fucking time you click that motherfucker, it makes you paler.
Oh, really?
Straight up. Straight the fuck up. And yeah, James, so the AI is racist also. It's being programmed by racist people who are literally putting that into the parameters for that software of what it's going to do to what the camera is picking up. And literally their idea of beauty is to lighten you. What the fuck?
Yeah, right? Right? So, yeah, it's not the AI... It's not that the AI decided to be racist, it's that it was programmed by racist people, or people with racial biases that they probably didn't even know about. It's just that it had not occurred to them to ever think of a different beauty standard or a different set of data to feed into the system. So, yeah, always important to keep that in mind if people are trying to bring up this idea that somehow by using new technology we can transcend prejudices, because it's not going to be the case, and that prejudices towards capitalism are baked into many systems too. So it all has to do with whoever's putting in the data. So
yeah, and they thought that turning up the brightness without turning up the saturation was a good thing. They fucked up. As a photographer and graphic designer, I can tell you exactly where they fucked up. That's where they fucked up.
Yep. All right. Well, let's see. Don't have too much left here, so I think we'll probably get to the end pretty shortly.
Initially, before racism as a way of thinking was firmly ingrained, while white indentured servants were often treated as badly as black slaves, there was a possibility of cooperation. As Edmund Morgan sees it, there are hints that the two despised groups initially saw each other as sharing the same predicament. It was common, for example, for servants and slaves to run away together, steal hogs together, get drunk together. It was not uncommon for them to make love together. In Bacon's Rebellion, one of the last groups to surrender was a mixed band of 80 Negroes and 20 English servants. As Morgan says, masters, quote, initially at least perceived slaves in much the same way they had always perceived servants, shiftless, irresponsible, unfaithful, ungrateful, dishonest. And if freemen, with disappointed hopes, should make common cause with slaves of desperate hope, the results might be worse than anything Bacon had done. And so measures were taken. About the same time that slave codes involving discipline and punishment were passed by the Virginia Assembly, quote, Virginia's ruling class, having proclaimed that all white men were superior to black, went on to offer their social but white inferiors a number of benefits previously denied them. In 1705, a law was passed requiring masters to provide white servants whose indenture time was up with 10 bushels of corn, 30 shillings, and a gun, while women servants were to get 15 bushels of corn and 40 shillings. Also, the newly freed servants were to get 50 acres of land. Morgan concludes, quote, once the small planter felt less exploited by taxation and began to prosper a little, he became less turbulent, less dangerous, more respectable. He could begin to see his big neighbor not as an extortionist, but as a powerful protector of their common interests. We see now a complex web of historical threads to ensnare blacks for slavery in America. The desperation of starving settlers, the special helplessness of the displaced African, the powerful incentive of profit for the slave trader and planter, the temptation of superior status for poor whites, the elaborate controls against escape and rebellion, the legal and social punishment of black and white collaboration. The point is that the elements of this web are historical, not natural. This does not mean that they are easily disentangled, dismantled. It means only that there is a possibility for something else, under historical conditions not yet realized. And one of these conditions would be the elimination of that class exploitation which has made poor whites desperate for small gifts of status and has prevented that unity of black and white necessary for joint rebellion and reconstruction. Around 1700, the Virginia House of Burgesses declared, quote, the Christian servants of this country, for the most part, consist of the worser sort of the people of Europe. And since such numbers of Irish and other nations have been brought in, of which a great many have been soldiers in the late wars, that according to our present circumstances we can hardly govern them, and if they were fitted with arms and had the opportunity of meeting together by musters, we have just reason to fears they may rise upon us. It was a kind of class consciousness, a class fear. There were...
Just wanted to take a moment to point out that that line of thinking right there also comes into play of why, like, Scottish and Irish people were also not considered white. They were also considered subhuman until about 100, maybe 120 years ago, when they started participating in racism against black and indigenous people and Hispanic people too.
Yep. Yeah, because as soon as the slaves were free and there was no more legal slavery, they had to find another way to keep people divided and fighting amongst themselves in the lower classes. So what do? They're like, oh, hey, Irish people, you want to be white? Well, okay, we'll give you positions of power. You can be politicians, you can be police officers, and we'll help you climb the social ladder. All you have to do is keep fighting against the black people that you live with.
Right. Same with Italians.
Yep. Whiteness has always been a tool of exclusion. It has never been a race. It has never been a people with any sort of common heritage. It has just been a tool to say, these people are in the in group, and anyone who is not is in the out group.
Right. It's It's just a fucked, sweeping generalization at this fucking point.
Oh yeah.
It's like culturally, these different groups have nothing in fucking common.
Yeah.
Genetically, we're talking different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, too, of different parts of the human diaspora coming out of Africa in the first place.
Right.
It's just, did you either move out of Africa from having lost your pigment and needed to survive in a cooler climate where you weren't going to get fried to death by the sun? Or did you acclimate to that by having moved to a northern area for so long? But still completely separate groups of people.
Right. Yeah,
they just decided that having paleness in common meant they could fucking lock arms in this false sense of fucking superiority.
And, it's just a convenient and quick way to sort people out. So, it's like the Peter Griffin thing. You hold up the color Pantone card against the face, and that determines how you treat them.
Yep. God, I remember, that even came up when I was in, junior high and high school, about crayons having one very pale, pinky colored fucking flesh tone.
Flesh, yeah.
Yes. And it's like, what?
Right.
What?
Right.
No, flesh comes in many colors, not just this extremely pale, pinkish tone.
And it was such a big to-do when they finally introduced flesh tones in many different shades. And, of course, conservatives were all up in arms about it because it's something different, and they just have to be against anything that changes. Same thing happened with makeup, too, when they started having nude be not just pink, but, many different colors.
Right. Why? Because humans come in many different colors.
Yeah.
God damn it. Fuck. Trying to get motherfuckers to wrap their head around white not being the centrality of human existence is just so many what the fucks.
Yep. Yeah, for so many people, it's just the default. It's the thing you don't even think about. It's basically why that whole Gamergate thing happened. Because, you can either be a man or you can be political, or you can be white or you can be a political race. And it's just because it was the default for so long to just white men in video games that anything different seemed like, there must be some sinister hidden agenda pushing this here. It couldn't just be that more people got involved in video game making and wanted to represent different sorts of people and tell different stories.
Didn't know liking video games was inherent to the shape of your fucking genitals or the shade of your skin.
Right, yeah. It's got nothing to do with that. In fact, when video games first came out, they were marketed to boys and girls. It was just at some point in the 80s, they decided there's going to be more money in making it a boys-only thing. And so they ditched all the ones that were appealing to girls. And oh, hi, Nate. Good to see you.
Hi, Nathan.
Wish you could come on today, but I guess
Right.
you're busy sanding and stuff. You said so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
You gotta join us on here, though, Nate.
yeah, one of these times you're gonna get on here and you're gonna share your opinions too.
We're gonna peer pressure you into it, bro.
That's right. I will give you my link to my YouTube channel though, so that you can find me the next time. Let me pull it up here.
I love that James is just seeding all kinds of fucking sarcasm all over the comments right now, too. Like,
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, humans come in many shapes, sizes, shades, ability
It's one of those
levels,
things
all
that
sorts of things.
speaks volumes to the lack of proper fucking education in this country, too, because clearly there are a lot of racist white people who are not being taught that Africa is the cradle of all human life.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. We all can trace every bit of our ancestry straight back to Africa.
Yeah.
Not a fucking human on this planet who doesn't.
Right. And yeah, it was, I think the story is still holding true that there was a point in Africa when the climate got so harsh that it was really down to a group of like, I don't know, like 20,000 humans, and that was it. So that everyone that came after that point came from those same 20,000 people.
Yep. The ones who were able to survive that shit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We come from them.
Yep, we all do.
A small group. I
It
mean,
is.
hell, most major cities have more than that many people in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh-huh.
If only they'd known that their descendants would number as many as the fucking stars themselves and
Right, yeah.
end up
Jeez.
doing stupid shit to each other.
Right, yeah. Be cruel based on arbitrary distinctions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that really fucking angers me because the content of who a person is has to do with their personality, their choices, their actions.
How they treat people.
Ain't got
Yeah.
fuck all to do with what fucking shape, size, color, or gender of skin suit that your energy got dropped into.
Absolutely.
None
Yeah.
of us had a choice in that.
Yep.
What matters is the things that we have a choice over and what we choose.
Absolutely. Yeah, no one is born good or evil or more or less of an asshole. It's something that is ingrained into us, or that we are shaped by the world that we get put into. All right. Well, let's finish off this chapter here.
Absolutely.
Things happening in early Virginia and in the other colonies to warrant it. So ends Chapter 2 of
Wow.
Howard Zinn's
Wow, we were really
History
close.
of the United States. I gotta tell you guys, that was a rough one for me to
Figure we
read. There are
lost
some of those words in there
half
that
a
I
sentence before the end.
Yeah, we did.
Fuck.
Just like the first chapter,
Yeah.
It happens. It's hard when he's got like we still got a few minutes to go, and we got like 5 minutes to go. So the last 5 minutes is just him, or I assume it's him. I don't know the gender of the speaker, but the speaker just giving their own thoughts about the chapter that they just read. But I think we can skip. I think we can skip that this time. I don't know that it added much to the last chapter. So I guess we can just kind of share our own thoughts instead.
Hell yeah. Nathan, I like that idea. I would definitely wear that shirt on the shows.
Yeah. Hey, if anyone out there wants to do some graphic design to make some more shirts for the show, I will split profits with you if you make a design, and I can put it up on my merch store. I have a merch store now, by the way.
Hell
So,
yeah.
Yeah, you can buy hats and T-shirts and tank tops and all sorts of stuff.
Well, that's actually something I have to work on for Wham too. So maybe while
Yeah.
I'm at it, I'll kick a few designs over your way too.
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. I like your design work, Trisha.
Thank you.
I think it was really cool what you did with the head theory background. Looks really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I enjoy it. It's one of those forms of art that is unique in its ability to take what you see in here and put it on the screen.
yeah, it's really cool. Very cool. All right, so that's the end of this chapter. This was a difficult chapter for sure. I mean, there's absolutely no justification for slavery, of course.
Yes, James, that's Nate from For We Are Many. Yeah. Nathan, I think James misses you. Thank you, Shanika. And same. As far as, your comments and input there. One
so
of these
it's-
days I'm going to get you on the show too.
Yeah, I always like having more voices and more people come on the show. It always makes it better. So, each one teach one. I like that.
Yeah, I've been talking with Shanika about her coming on Head Theory.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Unfortunately, for this week, I have a thing that came up for work. We're going to be doing a potting party for an apartment complex that I work for with my landscaping business. So I don't think we're going to be able to do head theory unless you guys want to do a different night this week.
We could do that, or I could host it through my Restream account. It'll still go to Left Signal Boost and stuff.
Yeah.
But it would be on the For We Are Many Twitch instead of the Red Theory Twitch.
Yeah. Amanda's going to be helping me with the event.
Oh, is she? Okay.
So, yeah.
Wasn't sure if she was going to be free or not. Okay. Amanda, if you're still watching, touch base with me. Let's figure, what other day we could do this week then.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, if you guys want to do it tomorrow night or Wednesday night or even Friday night, so that would all be fine if you want to have a different day.
And yeah, Shanika, that's fine if you want to wear a mask.
Yeah,
it's fine if you want to just pop up a profile picture. Like, I wonder if it'll do it right now. Usually, if you shut off your camera, it'll just pop up whatever photo you have saved as profile picture, like that.
So there, yeah, just like that. So you can appear this way, whatever your logo is.
Or
like that.
As it's doing right now, it's just putting my initials up there instead of profile pictures. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, any way you want to come on that you're comfortable with, that's totally fine with me. And I always love having more people on. It adds to the richness of opinions that are shared, and end up with more productive discussion, and it's always great.
Oh yeah. And Shanika's very knowledgeable about psychology, and
cool.
We've had some really good deep discussions about certain things. But I know, that would just be beautiful to have your input on head theory, especially. Yeah.
Cool. Are you wanting to come on right now, Shanika? Because that's a possibility too.
Right.
I think Trisha could send you the link if you want.
I can do that right now. Just grab that in Messenger. All right, Shanika, that's in your inbox. Nate, I just saw you message me too. I'll hit you back after we wrap this up here. But yeah, this chapter book is it's one of those that fucking just repeatedly punches you in the fucking gut and makes you scream, what the fuck?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's utterly atrocious. The shit that people could actually fucking justify by themselves.
Right.
Like, how do you even look yourself in the fucking mirror?
Mm-hmm. Well, and they had all their religious clerics and whatnot backing them up at every step and finding ways to justify what they're doing. So, I'm sure they lived their entire lives utterly convinced that they were right in whatever it is that they did.
Right, God anointed them the chosen ones.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it'd be nice to have Rob on the show again sometime. It's been a while since he's been on, so
yeah,
I'll have to reach out to him, see if he wants to do one of these episodes here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Wednesday, are we going to do combating liberalism?
Yeah, that's the plan right now. I'm definitely down for that. It's a pretty short one too, so maybe we'll do more than one.
That's one of those pieces too that, even if we dive further into the Roe issue, we can connect it with that too, because
for sure,
what we're seeing right now is a bunch of neoliberal shit.
Yeah, a bunch of grandstanding and not actual action from the few people capable of actually doing something about these issues.
Right. It would have been codified last week if it wasn't for Manchin.
Manchin, yeah.
Yep. Who's a Democrat.
Yep. Supposedly.
Yeah.
I think he's yet to vote with the Democrats, but
right.
But yeah.
But it just shows it really is two heads of the same monster. They're both center to right wing.
Yeah.
There is nobody in government who's actually on the fucking real left.
Right.
Democrats are just center to center right, and Republicans further right than that, to the extreme. Neither of them gives a flying fuck about what happens to us or how our rights are whittled the fuck away if it means that they can keep hold on their own fucking personal power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It's they're basically just, for the most part, Republicans who feel bad about the things they do. I'm never going to make them change their actual behavior. They feel bad about it too. The Democrats. Manchin is just the latest ever-changing villain in the DNC, has constantly used since even before the days of Obama. Yeah, that's the thing is. Democrats don't mind having a stumbling block. It's good for them because, for one thing, it gives them something to rally around to raise money for their next campaign. They can be like, oh, we gotta vote harder to get rid of Manchin, or to get an even bigger majority so that Manchin can't stand in the way and stuff like that. So if only you will donate a little bit more, then we can keep the fight going, and we can actually do the thing. Then we can do the things we want to do. You know.
Right, they're so fucking exploiting it. I mean, I've even gotten shit in my fucking email of them asking, clamoring for signatures on a petition to try to, convince the other establishment Dems to fucking support codifying Roe. Mm-hmm. But the only way you can sign it is if you donated to them.
Oh, God, those are the worst. The ones where you have to like sign up to either be, email blasted every day, or actually donate money in order to actually sign the petitions. Absolutely bullshit.
Like, how are you going to keep signatures to your petition behind a paywall? I went the fuck off. I emailed them back and went the fuck off. Like, if you really gave a shit about the issue, you them back behind a paywall. What's up, Shanika?
Hello.
Howdy. Can you hear me?
Yep,
we can hear you.
I have to confess, I blocked my own mic. Then I had to go all the way through Google.
Uh-oh. Cutting out already.
Did you mute your mic again? Oh, there you are.
Oh.
Am I here?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Hey. Wow, I love your show.
Thank you.
Zan, I love you so much. And is this what's your name, sir?
My name is Zach.
Zach, how you doing? I'm Shanika.
Good, how are you? Good to meet you.
I really love what y'all are doing here, and my number one thing is that I tend to think about the mental health and the reason why people in the United States are doing some of the craziest stuff that we're doing and what we're going through. So, yeah, I probably focus on that a whole lot. I love that y'all are doing the Howard Zinn tonight, because that is one of those, everybody who's read it and they have a sobering up of what's going on. Right. I haven't been able to read and study as much as y'all do, because I've honestly been on the journey, on the trail of, a lot of homelessness and stuff like that. So my point of view is, I don't know, it's like 100% just, I can't really relate directly to what a lot of people talk about these days, because I've been disconnected. But I'll tell you, the disenfranchisement, the taking away of rights without any type of, you're not aware that people are putting a piece of paper in front of you and telling you to sign here while you're half out of your mind. Right. And, all types of stuff like that. That happens. So when you're talking about the Howard Zinn, for me, it just really, somebody in the chat said that the colonizers are being narcissistic. That's definitely true. They're definitely sadistic, but in my mind, I look at it objectively and I also, as a Black woman who's brown skinned, and makes a big deal about being brown skinned, will definitely have to live and sustain in life in that body by understanding, the psychology of the colonizer. What else am I going to do? I'm going to sit around and, and I'm thinking about the misogynoir that happens too. That's another thing. So they can't take it out. Black dudes, a lot of them, some of them can't take it out on white people. So, who else is left? Sometimes it comes out that way. Or each other, the gun violence. So we're
Yeah.
not.
Yep.
So yeah.
That's something that Bell Hooks points out in Killing Rage, Ending Racism, is how these white supremacist and patriarchal ideologies got fucking ingrained in everyone who was forced.
Everyone. Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah, people think about like, this group is the one that needs to be educated, or these people over there are so ignorant. It's like, oh, wait a minute. The fact that you're saying that based on nothing, the discrimination that I go through, I literally was discriminated by a Mexican woman. And I'm not against Mexican people. I'm bilingual and everything. So I'm not I'm not against anybody, trust me. But I'm just saying though that it's like she thought just because I'm Shanika that's why I named myself Shanika from Chicago. What else am I gonna do? Because that's the very first thing people see. And they already, see me as a dead cockroach, as you can see. So fuck it. And so she couldn't hear anything I was saying for 7 months. The white prescriber for that 7 months when I was telling her about the situation from the therapist. And I literally like feel like a total asshole. Fuck it. I'm gonna put her video in the chat. I'm gonna find that shit real quick because I'm just pissed enough to go ahead and let you see a little video of her if anybody wants to click on it. But trust me, this woman just kind of, I think that a lot of things that happen to the disenfranchised, it doesn't get heard. So anytime I talk about something, people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, because, from that very moment, they've never heard it or seen it. So what Zan was saying with Bell Hooks, and forgive me, I haven't like read as much, but I'm just, I'm vibing with y'all.
We're all learning here. It's fine.
Right.
No one's read everything. So.
But yeah, that that right there is so real. Is just right there, because when I went in and gave my diagnosis is complex PTSD, and I probably also have OSDD1A, and I'm on disability. So I'm just trying to make it or whatever. And
that's rough.
Yeah. Moved out of Chicago several times, been homeless in several cities. I obviously have an accent. So as soon as I start talking, people, they instantly, the number one thing anybody's ever concerned about is toning me down. I'm not hitting anybody. I've never been to jail. I've never done, hard drugs. I ain't against nobody, but I'm just letting me, because they've already sized me up as, based on my name. I literally have the name that is the name. You know what I mean? Like, I got the name, I got the skin color, I got the accent, and I'm telling you where I'm from. That's, that's all the thing, all the proof you need to not believe anything I say. 7 months.
And a lot of people, sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of people can't even wrap their fucking heads around systemic racism existing in the mental health care vicinity. And it's like, no, it really fucking does. And it comes
a lot of people can't wrap
their heads around to be your support system.
I'm sorry. I'm so fidgety. Sorry for cutting you off. I'm listening to you. I cut you off first. It's just, but it's true. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like wrapping your head around something as far as like, I do not remember the term if there's somebody who has several strikes against them. So they're dealing with not just of color, but, mental health, but also something where I can't remember the term right now, but basically when you have more than one thing going on. So all of that, with me that I'm describing, and then I talked to the very first person I talked to, the young lady, when I told her my diagnosis, she stopped writing and she basically gave me the Forrest Gump treatment and was like, do you know that this is not the therapy session? And my boyfriend was with me, and he's white. And he just, the things that he's seen, he's like, he's looking at this like, he couldn't believe. He's pissed off. He's more pissed off than I am because he's tripping out. And she, stopped writing, and I let her know that I was telling her my diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So this woman was told very clearly and plainly by my boyfriend, complex PTSD, please make sure that the clinic that she's assigned to, that I'm assigned to, understands that. When I walk in there, there's a complex PTSD therapist there. that was always there that I could have gotten with. But instead of putting me with her, I guess because she's white and I'm black, and I guess, I'm scared of white people because everybody's a dog catcher, and I'm an ignorant, Negro or whatever, negress, you know. They put me with the only person of color in there who's it's nothing against her, obviously, but her skill set was not up to par. And she triggered me so badly that I had a depression that turned into blood clots in my legs. I had already had several things going on with me that I have a lot of health problems. You wouldn't notice from looking at me because I'm not, I don't have a cane, but there's a lot of internal stuff.
Sure.
And I ended up having to get blood transfusions. I had already had fibroids. My anemia acted up really bad. And this woman, she knew all these things. Like, I literally told her the things that I've gone through, and she still decided that the best approach was to depend on her mentor and depend on her, whoever is coaching her into how to help me. So she's on one wooden peg leg, trying to help me, and that's not working. And she's not being honest. And I was telling the prescriber that I'm concerned about that. The supervisor is right down the hall. All four of these women are in the same building. And this building is sitting right here close to where I live, and I can get there. And it's good that I'm here so I can go to get my therapy. I thought it was going to be perfect. And, they put me with this woman. I got triggered, depressed so bad, dissociation so bad. I ended up having to get a hysterectomy. I literally have 3 what look like stab wounds on my stomach, and my, after surgery, my mind, body, everything is different. I already had to learn how to survive and cope with my issues. And because they decided that as a Black woman, I can't possibly know as much as I know. And if you look at my phone, the books, I don't actually physically read books, paper, hold them in your hand, because just sitting there trying to look at a book, my paranoia and all that stuff, like, just noticing what's going on around you will just spark up real terrible. And I can't, so I choose to do the Audible, and I download something. My boyfriend, he'll give me a few things, and I'm listening to stuff and washing the dishes. I showed her that, and that's still not enough proof to believe that I know what I need. And they didn't care. She just kept doing these little experimental things where she was trying to get me to draw a box, and I'm sitting here talking about Freud, and I'm reading these books, and she want me to draw pictures. Now, who's the more educated and experienced person in the room? It's obviously me, but she keeps taking over and triggering me into dissociation and tricking me into letting her take the lead. The thing is that I can remember what happened months after it happened, but while it's happened, my mind is shut down just so I can survive. I got to think about several things. Right. I'm a very tall, dark-skinned person. Before you approach me, I'm Black. I'm unambiguous. And then when I was very thin, people thought that I was guy or trans, and then they, were like kind of anti-trans acting. It's a lot of stuff that happens. And you don't know that this is happening because it's not on the news. It's not on Facebook. It's not out there. When I was on Facebook telling people, and I'm very open, obviously, to a point. And I was on Facebook and I was sharing the stuff that was happening to me, and I got all these wow emojis. And even anytime I've talk about certain things, people decide whether or not to believe what I say. Like I said, the believeology, and then they get into trying to accuse me of lying about things, or trying to force their way into coaching me on how to fix the problem because they're concerned or anxious because they've never heard of these things. So that builds upon it. So I just said, I love that Zen wanted me to come on. I didn't know what to talk about other than to just let my mouth run, but
that's fine.
That's what it is right there. I love praxis. I love the idea of praxis. I love theory, but a lot of people, I just probably I told somebody, you need to eat theory and shit praxis.
There you
and
go.
Word.
There you go.
I'm long-winded. I can't help it.
No, that's fine.
A lot of what you're speaking on, though, the things they're trying to reflect on to you is actually just their own ignorance and lack of education about psychology, and not understanding that when you have PTSD, and especially complex PTSD, that when people do shit that triggers you, it literally has physical outcomes of that. It does
Yes.
physical fucking damage. When they say
Yeah.
you're getting on my nerves, that's not just a proverbial thing for those who
Thank you.
PTSD. It's a literal thing. It damages your central nervous system
Oh yeah.
and
Yes.
causes problems with your peripheral nerves too. So it's literally damaging all of your fucking tissues to go through these things. Stress itself will kill you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wears you out. That's absolutely true. And this is already such a cruel and apathetic country when it comes to things like mental health. There's so much stigma surrounding it to begin with, that to have those extra dimensions that make it for even more of a struggle. I can't even imagine what you've been through having to deal with all that. I really feel for you.
Thank you. I'm actually like, I mean, I'm still working on things, but I probably apply a lot of self-care type things because throughout my struggle, I just, the sober option, I want to say that somebody really was hating on me thinking that I hated drug addicts or I was against. They got real triggered. I simply said, and I didn't say any of that, okay? I simply said, I noticed that there's a difference between how people with mental illness and people with drug addiction are treated in this country. And I think it has a lot to do with what this society wants. My theory, at least, is that, or the society, government, powers that be, or whatever, is trying to get people to, be oppressed and sad and everything and just constantly be the drones, like the Matrix or whatever. And we know that part, but as far as the mental health versus drug addiction, you're almost being rewarded from a psychological point of view. And let it be known that I'm trying to be objective. I'm not sitting here because see, the thing is that if you were looking me in my face, you will see a dark skinned person, you will see the styling of my glasses, hair, or whatever, and then you would trigger yourself into thinking that I have a hidden, what do you call, passive aggressive message, you know what I'm saying? And definitely Renee's saying about, the projection they projected onto you, that's definitely correct. That's all psychology. It's all psychology. You just gotta like kind of get into the details. But what I'm really saying is that I don't have anything against addicts, obviously. I'm just really trying to put together more help for, the mental health side, and as me being a person who hasn't partaken of, drink or, heavy things, Last time I had a drink was 7 years ago. Last time I had a cigarette was 7 years
Congrats.
ago. And, I mean, I gave that up when I was about to go into there was one shelter that I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much going to have to focus because this is the one that's going to get me on top. What did they do? They gave me, I want to shout them out, Lincoln Park Community Shelter. I was there for a year and 3 months. And they gave us a notebook called a track folder. And they treated it like school. They were like, you're going to make sure that you obviously had chores. It was in a church, the basement of a church. You're going to have chores. We're going to have, nightly meeting. You're going to get fed. The food was really good. It's a good neighborhood and everything. Is
That's good.
And doing that gave me a lot of foundation. So you can make it. You just have to really pick the breadcrumbs that you got. You can't be sitting there being mad about or sad about or whatever. You need to just be focused. And
unfortunately, there's no time to rest and really, deal with this stuff. Really, it's the world just keeps coming down on you, no matter what. So you got to keep going.
That makes it doubly hard when you do reach out for the help that you need, and you're going in and seeking mental health care, and they treat you like you are just drug seeking because you presume that's what your issue is, not a legit mental health issue that is not, even leading to or being fed by any addiction or anything like that. It's like, no, maybe we should do some blood work and check levels of certain neurotransmitters and see if there is a void here that needs to be filled by a medication. Not treat somebody like they must just be seeking drugs or something, because you need something to help with your anxiety. You need something to help with um, anxiety times 10,000, which is what PTSD is. A lot of people like to label that as anxiety, and it's like, no, you're comparing like stubbing your toe to getting run over by a fucking tank. But there are certain medications that can help when it comes to being able to calm down the places where that takes your thought processes.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like even we're only recently seeing people actually get to do studies on ketamine for PTSD. There's finally a little bit of an open door for that. That's one of the few things that stops that downward spiral of mental thoughts and can actually help you find some calm and some peace and be able to look at things objectively. We should have access to things like these without people treating you like you're just coming in drug seeking because you need mental health care.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like this. It's when they're talking about how they're going to play us against each other. I just imagine it. Obviously, the TV Hollywood shows you this room with a lot of people and this big table. They're wearing costumes and all this type of symbolic type of thing. I don't think so much about that, but I just think about, from my point of view, what must have happened to make sure that this country of ours is some sort of like producer of a culture that you can actually make money off of a culture. You can actually make money off of an image. And so the same way that you have, a painting or something like that, American culture, if, you can charge 5 times as much because it's a popular thing, brand or whatever. But then to create that much capitalistic, like engineering, you're going to have to dominate the people a certain way. You're going to have to manipulate them a certain way.
Yeah.
There's a book by last name Fromm. I'm a little bit I'm a little trying trouble with my memory today, but Enric Fromm, and it's something about how man seeks to be dominated. It sounds crazy, but this is the thing. Let's say, for example, you're like actually in a helpless situation. You will probably go to either authority or your father, mother, somebody that is close to you. And that's a normal thing for society. But if you crush society to a certain level and then give them hope or something, a very strong leader, they're going to want to follow that. And that's just what governments have been doing for ages. So it's like all psychology again. But yeah, from my point of view, I just tend to think that they're just seriously manipulating us to be against each other. Like you guys were saying before that it's in the culture. Were you saying about, like, was that from Bell Hooks right there, where it's in the culture, how we're all programmed to be racist or internalize racism? There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Gets ingrained into you, so you don't even notice it anymore.
But it's like a buffet table. It's all poisoned. But, I might dig the, filet mignon over here. You might get a burger, but we're both getting some form of the programming. And the reason why there has to be entertainment, the reason why there has to be Hollywood, the reason why there has to be, I'm a media art major and I'm obsessed with media. But the reason why all this stuff has to occur is so that you can look at that and feel like watching the TV and all the comforts and all the things that go on when, soothing music, action, and entertainment. I mean, the word entertainment etymologically, I'm not saying that right. Inside. Tainment, which is from, basically it bases in like, from Spanish, I can say tener, which means to have. So keep you inside or keep you in. And that sounds like a trap to me. So I don't really relish a whole lot of fun things. I sound extremely boring. I've been told that I'm a nerd, so I've been told that my tone is wrong, and I have to. Would you like for me to perform for you? Like it's
No.
So, but yeah, I think eyes open, like they used to say. A lot of the stuff they used to say when I was a kid. I'm going to be 43 soon. So a lot of the stuff that you say when I was a kid and when I was in Chicago and like the, the hip hop, like just the real actual I actually was on Facebook. I was like, I was into hip hop, and someone was like, no, you weren't. I'm like, oh my God, how old do you think I am? I'm actually 23. So and when people are set against you to like, I'm not going to believe anything you say, you end up having to convince them or going on like another interview or another, like you're going on an audition to see if somebody's going to believe you or not type of thing. Like that's what it feels like to me. So it's not, I would advise people if they're going through that and they don't have advocacy or they don't have people to like actually go with them on whether it's an appointment or something like that. The advocacy is good if you have a teammate, somebody there to go with you. If you start like contacting different people, whoever just contact somebody. I literally on Facebook, because I was I don't even know why I'm being, anonymous here because like I put my face out on Facebook. I'm just, but I'm just chilling right now.
That's
But on
fine.
Facebook, I was like, really open and made so many friends that now I can be inside my home dealing with my issues, sometimes going outside, sometimes not, and be connected to human beings. And I have been building the, you know, structure of like my own. I mean, it's my own support too. I'm supporting other people too, but we're supporting each other. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's called peer support. And we used to do that in Chicago. I mean, it probably still exists. There's
That's
tons of,
great.
there's tons of like movements and ways to really you can go every single day of the week to some meeting or a group or something. But the thing with like when it's addiction is the celebration of that you decided to get help and people come to help you and there's a show called intervention. With mental health is jokes and haha and rubber room and you crazy ass bitch and you keep doing this again and like you literally have to remind people that I technically have brain damage even though I haven't been hit in the head. I technically can tell you some of the several things that's wrong with me. Number one, because I wasn't, well dealt with as a child, I
Hmm.
probably have a shrunken corpus callosum.
Oh,
I followed through. Now, did I get an MRI? No. You know what I did? I read about the brain. I matched my symptoms and patterns to
mhm.
what I'm reading about. It's called self education. Ever heard of it? And they used to tell us when we were a kid, read a book, knowledge
Yeah,
is power.
right.
And then you see me with I'm scrolling like like going 50 miles going north, just scrolling all these audible books on my phone. So look at all the books I read. The bitch had nothing to say. She didn't even want to respect that. She thought that that was a trick for me to, because she probably didn't recognize any of the books.
Right.
She even came one day and was like, I put the video in the chat, by the way. I'm evil as hell. Um she put she put her she let me know that she had gone to a conference where, wait for it, they had reminded her the importance of listening. A therapist with a whole ass master's degree on the wall right there. It's right there. I'm pointing to it right now. It's right there on the wall. Can you see it? And here she is leaning on a mentor, having to go to a conference that reminds her to listen. And when you watch the video, I'm really, I know you probably can't do it like, for the purposes of like slander or whatever, but I'm just burdening myself. Me
Mm.
estoy desahogando. And I needed to send that. And she's Mexican and I'm bilingual. And I'm not saying we're supposed to have therapy in Spanish, but I'm just pointing out the fact that I am not a bigot. If I were partially somewhat bigoted and tolerant of bigotry, I'd probably have more friends. I'm literally making friends through the internet because that's the only way that I'm going to sustain. Because a lot of times you just really have to look at people and say, you're dealing with having to classify each other and decide who's in and who's out. I really think that the ruling parties already taught you how to do that when they created something called colonizing and discrimination.
Right.
So yeah, it's everywhere. Like
Mm.
the whole buffet table is out there.
That's why it's
So
so pertinent in the education system to keep reinforcing that bullshit with whitewashed history.
yeah,
That's how they keep people indoctrinated into that bullshit.
my fourth grade history book had one paragraph about about Black history, one paragraph about Black people or what, and it was like Black people were enslaved and now they're free, and there was like this guy named, King, and that was it. One paragraph.
Yeah, right. Right.
Uh,
Well, thank you so much, Shanika, for coming on the show. I hope to have you on in future streams.
I love it.
Yeah, great. But for tonight, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. It is getting to be that time. So thank you. Thank you, Trish, as well, for coming on. It's always a good time when you're on. And I can't wait till Wednesday when we're going to finally get into combat liberalism. Hopefully we'll actually get to it this time and nothing else will come in the way of it.
Yeah. I was a surprise guest.
As much as I still feel like screaming and am internally screaming about Roe, I do feel ready to attack the material that we were supposed to work on last week.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Ro had me growling. I was like, wow,
Oh, God.
okay, well, they've already got my uterus, so I don't have to worry about it. But for the other gals, I would imagine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, when motherfuckers are getting up saying shit like your body's not your own no more, it's mine, it makes me want to cut their dicks off and
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Like, that's the whole entire thing. It's like the colonization is not just race. And I acknowledge the fact that I go through what I go through, but I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the only person going through stuff, because everybody's going through a separate part of that buffet. And here's another. So,
Yep.
oh God,
It's-
it even started.
It's so multifaceted of racism and sexism, of patriarchy. All these things come together upholding capitalism. It is one
Intersectional. I'm sorry. I'm blurred.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, honey. I do that all the
It's
time,
okay.
y'all.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Intersectional. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely critical for any good movement is to be intersectional, because we're all in this together, and if we're fighting each other, that means we're not fighting the real enemies, which is the ones who are actually holding all of us down.
Right.
So
Great.
About the time we unite and, actually confront the oppressors, for fuck's sake.
I just want to say, y'all made my entire year, because I'm literally on a show and I haven't made a fool of myself yet.
No, not at all. You contributed quite a bit. I really
Thank you
appreciate it.
thank you for hanging on and letting me, figure it out and get that out.
Of course, yeah, no problem.
Anytime.
All right.
Thank you
All right.
for coming on.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Everything you get to say is really shedding light on how these fucked ideologies of white supremacy are still affecting society today in manners that most people are completely blind to because they've never experienced it or witnessed it.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for your great comments. One of these times, Nathan, we're going to get you on as well.
Yeah.
But I guess tonight was not going to be that night. And yeah, I'll see everyone Wednesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Wednesday. Bye.